Hello and welcome back to the podcast. My name is Jed and we are in the philosophical midwifery book again today. Excuse me. Thank you for reading along with me. And we are in chapter 2, the Pathologos. We are on section 8, inner dialogues and dreams. We are going to discover, hopefully, how our inner dialogues and our dreams relate to our puzzle, and whether or not there is any communication through our inner dialogues and dreams that is intelligible and providential. Remember the beginning of the chapter, it is entirely possible to verify for yourself. Let me start again. I'm cheating over here. It is entirely possible to verify for oneself that we are part of a caring and intelligible universe. The verification is a kind of proof, since it is a way of understanding that is based upon a realization that our mind constantly communicates with us and for our benefit. Hooray. We will demonstrate that our choice of goals, the problems we face, the daydreams or fantasies we have, and the dreams that visit us in our sleep. Every one of them are like doorways into the richest source of insights into our life. Neat. Let's get those insights. Let's unpack those gifts. This is the opening that I was just reading. Here we are. Inner dialogues and dreams. 8. The most insidious influence of the Pathologos plays itself out. Let me just bring up my highlighter once again. I spilled a bit of coffee on the scroll. Let me just clean that up. There we go. There we go. The most insidious influence of the Pathologos plays itself out within us. Plays itself out as the inner dialogue we have with ourselves. Wow. So there are a lot of names that people give our inner dialogue, our inner critic, self-talk, the voice of the ego, maybe even the kaka daemon, the bad daemon, the bad voice of the false view of the self. But here we have an understanding of what it is. All of these different ways to talk about the internal chatter we have. We are understanding it. What is that? It is the most insidious influence of our Pathologos, which plays itself out within us as that inner dialogue we have with ourselves. Those inner voices have their own roles. Okay, so there are many voices. Thank you for suggesting comics. I am going back into them. Oh, I can't wait. You're going to make comic stories out of your dialectics? That'll be fun. If you do, share your comics first, and let's see if the rest of the people in our community can can solve the puzzle as what each of the characters represent based on our shared reading of the Logos and the Pathologos. And then you can let us know if we get it right. Oh, and the good thing about sharing a dialectic, as you get feedback with from other readers, maybe they saw new things or had new questions. which means you can go ahead and do another dialectic if you learn or gain new insight from that sharing of your work, sharing of your comments, and of course talking about it. It's no good just sharing art. You better talk about it. And it's no good just talking about it. It better be talking about it for the sake of benefit. That's what we're learning here, the dialectic. How to create and talk. Let's add artistic creation too. So how to artistically create as well as talk in a way that benefits the subject or the reader of your comments, and for us together now, the reader of this book. That's what Pierre Grimes is doing. He is using the dialectic all over the place to communicate a way of understanding our problems that is using the dialectic. He's communicating that, and he's using the dialectic structure to communicate that, while at the same time leaving little puzzles for us to solve that we will only solve if we ourselves learn and apply the dialectic to our reading. Just as, hey, maybe you as the author and your audience won't get as much benefit unless you participate in dialectic. Talk, ask questions about your art. In art galleries, sometimes an artist will show paintings and talk about the painting, what it meant, maybe highlight some puzzles. So, excited to have a read of those comics that you make. So long as they're based on the dialectic. And of course, the dialectic is either based on that which is eternally true in philosophy, in our reading of the Meno at the moment, or a dialectic can be to uncover what we thought was eternally true, but is actually a false image of truth or beauty or goodness that has resulted in us walking away with a false belief about ourselves that we do not suspect because we did not put it into words and we haven't yet learnt the dialectic. And that false belief becomes our mask, becomes how we show ourselves, affects the choice of goals that we have, and then eventually we identify with it. And it's always a negative, diminished view of the self. So, it can be a kind of reflection to uncover this false view of the self and the associated false ideas of being, ideas like beauty, justice, goodness, that made this false belief believable when we were young. Or it could be a dialectic on the true nature of the self. What is the one self? What is the pure self? And the associated ideas. This one self reflects into being. What are the true? What is the true nature of beauty? What is the true nature of justice? All of those things that we took the distorted image for as truth when we had our problem. So, win-win. Wow.
There's only two options at the end. It's a win-win.
It's a win-win. Oh, and whether we are exploring the self being in logos, in the positive, or exploring the pathologos false self, our pathologos images of being, and our pathologos inner dialogue, inner logos, inner self-talk. Whether exploring that set of three or that set of three, it's the dialectic. We're doing our intended function as sentient beings who have evolved to the stage of language and being able to use the language to reflect on self or ousia. What is the self? What is me? What am I? What am I doing here? What's going on? Neat. Our inner voices have their own roles and images as they unfold their message, so they serve a purpose. I was just thinking about how the characters in your comic book will have their own role and images. Maybe some characters could represent aspects of your own inner dialogue. If you were doing a comic about your own Pathologos, or your hunt to discover the Pathologos. Which you could represent in any number of ways in your comic. Maybe your comic's about aliens, and your aliens are in a hunt to discover a new planet to live on. That's the idea. But those in the know, those in the game, those who are fellow philosophers would recognize, oh, okay, I bet each of these characters in this very fun and interesting comic book represent something about the Logos. So we can wonder about that, puzzle about that, and talk with our friends about it over coffee. Which is one of the important things art can do. It can be an object of further reflection and conversation. So, the inner voices have their own roles and images, and they unfold their message. They create our states of mind as well. Interesting. I'm going to put that in yellow. They create our state of mind. Which is interesting because that's usually what we relate most directly to. Our feeling of happiness, or our feeling of sadness, or our feeling of fear, or our feeling of desire. That's our state of mind. And it's these inner voices which have a message, a role, and an image that are creating the states of mind that we experience our time as living beings through. It also affects the relationship with ourselves and to our reality. I think those are also yellows. These are big ones. Our state of mind, our relationship to ourselves. Whoops. And our relationships to our reality. The dialogue takes on various forms of the Pathologos. Okay, so there are various forms. There's a lot of great content in here. And even the tonality of these inner voices can often be recognized as belonging to those principal figures in the Pathologos drama. What are we getting? We're getting a list. What does that mean? Write it out so you can do a dialectic on it, then make a comic on it. What have we got? We've got voices, roles, images. We've got a message. We've got states of mind. We've got a relationship to ourselves. We've got a relationship to reality. We have the tonality of the voices. All of these things have a relationship to the Pathologos drama we're on the hunt for. In philosophical midwifery, it has always been significant for the subject to describe these inner dialogues. It's always significant, which is why we are learning to become better people by learning to become dialecticians, so we can provide the support, the safety, the care, the space, the empathy, so that they can do this significant thing, which is describing their inner dialogues. And comparing, so we're putting words on what we normally just silently accept and go along with, which is significant because that thing we're silently going along and accepting is false, number one. Number two, the cause of all our goddamn problems. Number three, causes our states of mind, affects our relationship to ourselves and others, and so on and so on. It's the most significant thing. We better put words on it. And what do we do after we put words on it? Well, the same thing we're learning and reading. We were just saying, hey, look at all these terms or words. Let's pull them out and write them down. And then, that's not the end of the reflection. Organize it. Organize these terms within the 4 categories of the dialectic. These ones. DDAC. Definition, demonstration, division, conclusion. 4, if it does exist, and a kind of world if the thing you are doing a dialectic on doesn't exist. Okay, so pulling out the terms and then organizing it within a structure. That's how we read. And that's how we play. And that's how we look for puzzles and solve puzzles. It's the fun. So then we have confetti. And then we have dancing. See? So, pull out the key terms, or in this instance, put words on the inner dialogues. Or as a midwife, create the conditions to do that. Oh, you like the dancing farmyard animals. Yeah, they're helping me. They're my co-streamers. They're just hanging out. So find the key terms and then put it in a pattern. I don't know if they want me to dox them. Don't know if the flamingo and the chicken want me to dox them and use their names on the stream. But sometimes they kiss on stream. Yeah. They like... It's not cute. It's a weird thing. It's a weird sex thing. I think they like being watched. It's not awe. No, that's silly. Of course it is. They just love each other because they're cute. Look at them. Okay, so pulling out the key terms or put words on our inner dialogues and then look for the pattern. And practice putting it into the pattern. By the way, as the midwife facilitating this benefit to whoever you care about and wants to go through this, as the midwife, that's also what you're doing. You are recognizing key terms and key words that they might not recognize because they are less familiar with the logos and pathologos. You can help direct their attention to those keywords and then ask questions that help them organize it according to the dialectical structure so they can gain understanding and maybe new insight or new memory of the cause of their fundamental problems. So, terms and structure, self-logos, and dialectic. Neat.
Wow.
It's a win-win.
So, what's the equivalent to terms and pattern or terms and structure? Putting words on our inner dialogues and looking for the pattern by comparing them to past learnings. Sounds like looking for patterns. This is the simplest way to understand that we do not have a pathologos. Oh, great. That's the end of the channel. Hooray. Very happy to hear that. One of the most important things we read we could do is to remove our pathologos. It's the cause of all of our problems. As a soul, that's what we're here to do. It's needed to create the freedom to pursue other goals, including spiritual goals. It's our purpose. It's the most important thing, which is why we are reading this, and I'm doing my best to make it seem as fun as it really is. It's awesome and accessible. But we just read we don't have a pathologos, so we can shut it all down. Hooray! We don't have to worry anymore. We don't have a pathologos. Actually, let's finish the sentence before we end the podcast. The simplest way to understand that we do not have a Pathologos. The Pathologos has us. That's what he was saying. The Pathologos has us. Another reason why we never play the blame game. If you have a zombie virus infection in your brain causing you to want to eat other brains and do nothing else, do you blame the zombie or the virus? Now, this zombie virus is something that all human beings get, and therefore it's the most important thing we can do as a human being for our own souls and for our desire to be beneficial, be good, be virtuous towards others as well. So it's a curable zombie virus, which is why he talked about sleepwalking. I use the zombie virus thing. I think zombie virus is better. But you can wake from being a sleepwalker. Meaning you wouldn't blame the zombie, but you would say, hey, zombie, you better take your goddamn Zombrex anti-zombie medication. In other words, we have a responsibility to do our best to reflect on, discover, understand, and free ourselves from our pathologos, our false belief about ourselves, the consequent, the negative dialogue that follows that false belief that causes our states of mind, causes us to relate to ourselves and others the way we do, and to reality. Because the Pathologos has us, we don't have it. The best times to study the inner dialogue are before, during, or after we engage in pursuing our personally significant goals, because it becomes quite evident that those early patterns of thought that are represented in our inner dialogue, our kakadaemon, influence our present pattern of thoughts. Influence our present pattern. In which in turn, here we go, interfere with the achievement of our goals. What does that mean? That means if, like we were saying earlier, this is the most important thing we can do, unzombify our souls, and the best time to do that kind of reflection, following the structure, looking for of the dialectic, looking for the terms of the logos, using this art of midwifery, the best time to do that, to unzombify us, thumbs up, is before, during, or after we have engaged in pursuing our personally significant goals, because if we do so, it can become quite obvious, quite evident, and we would also care. If it's something we don't care about, then who cares if we get blocked? Do something else. But it becomes quite evident that our early patterns of thought, the negative patterns, influence our present pattern of thoughts. We're stuck in a way of thinking. We're trapped in a box, a way of interpreting, falsely interpreting ourselves in the world. And it becomes evident before, during, and after we're pursuing our most meaningful goals. So let me ask you this. Oh, it's interesting. Oh, I'm glad to find that it's interesting. I think it's the most interesting thing in the world. I think it's objectively the best thing. Objectively, that's what we're reading. So I'm glad that you're enjoying it too. Right, well, let me ask you this. If we were always wanting to do the most important thing, reflect on our inner dialogue that will get in the way of our goals. If we want to do that all the time, and the time to do it is before, during, or after we are doing our most meaningful goals, then would it follow that our job is to always be pursuing our most personally significant goals, so that we can either always be doing that or always be either right before that activity, in the middle of the activity, or right after that activity, which is the ideal time for the kind of self-reflection needed to discover and free ourselves from the pattern of thinking that prevents us from our highest excellence, our highest happiness, and our highest goals, the very highest goals, and a highest way of being within that goal. Remember, you're doing your highest goals with excellence, with the most happiness, with the most care, with the most fun. You're either going to be engaged in that most fun, most meaningful, highest excellence activity, or you are going to be at an ideal time to reflect on the inner dialogue that came up while you were doing it, right before you crossed the threshold and did it, or right after you did it. In other words, half the time you could be pursuing your most meaningful goals and having the ups and downs, facing that inner dialogue, which from the sounds of it is going to be against you at the beginning. It's going to be saying terrible things. It's going to have a pattern of thought that keeps you from reaching your goals until it's seen, until we learn to relate to it differently. Relate to our inner dialogue in a different way that we had been relating to it. Blindly following the insults to ourselves. Not speaking up about it, not questioning it, not doing the dialectic on it. This is the old way of being. This is the problematic way of being. This way of relating to your own inner thoughts is the same negative pattern of way of relating to everything else in your life, including your meaningful goals, which is why you're blocked. But if we relate to not just ourselves and our goals, but even our inner dialogues in a new way, all of the good things we've been learning up until now about philosophy and midwifery, we start to relate to our inner dialogues with curiosity, with the dialectic, looking for the key self-logos terms, looking to apply the dialectic structure to those terms. Not blindly agreeing with any inner thought, but asking questions. Oh, you really think I'm not going to be able to reach that goal? Interesting, inner voice. Why would you say that? What's your reasoning? Can you phrase it as a dialectic? By the way, the sound of this voice shutting me down seems familiar. Even the tone is a clue. So what? Well, we are reading the Meno, and one of the quests in the Meno is to find a singular purpose to direct your soul, every part of your soul towards doing, so you're not scattered, so you're not a scatterbrain, but also so you can have a single-minded focus that all of the aspects of your soul can be working in harmony towards reaching. In the Meno, we're wondering about the state of phronesis and how that relates to being able to benefit or be excellent or virtuous. But here, it's the other side of the game. Can you do everything you can to free yourself from a false image of yourself that is causing your suffering and your blocks and your problems? But if that was our single purpose, it sounds like we also need to be doing not just that reflection, either before, during, or after our meaningful activities, but we need to be pursuing our most personally significant goals, which can then tie in philosophy, because our most personally significant goals would be ultimately some stage along the path to awakening philosophy. Realizing that your most personally meaningful goal might not be getting rich, but might be knowing the nature of your own mind, or the nature of reality, or the nature of beauty, or beyond that, to the self, knowing the self, really knowing what you are, right here, right now. What is that? What's experiencing all of these things? So, you're either pursuing your most personally meaningful, significant goals, which I'm hoping this channel has helped you discover. Those most personally significant goals might be philosophy and the dialectic, to know the self, or you're at an ideal opportunity to be reflecting on that goal and whether or not you're successful and what your inner dialogue was as you pursued that goal. So now we have a way of bringing together one of the puzzles we have been carrying as a channel. Should our main activity that we're doing at all times, if we can, be to seek the logos, the understanding and dialectic of the self, as well as the direct experience of self, nous, as well as the state of being of self, phronesis, which is following the art of the logos to know the self? Or should our single activity be following our pathologos clues to discover the false self so we can free ourselves from our problems? What should it be? Because whether we're talking about the virtues or meditation or just being productive or functioning with excellence, having a single-minded focus is necessary. But here we are able to take these two options, the self-logos or the pathologos, and bring them together and say, hey, pursue your most personally significant goal, which could be the self-logos. And then half the time reflect on the inner dialogues that come up to see if you can discover its opposite, its distortion, the pathologos view of the self. So we can do both together. It's one way of solving our the puzzle we've been playing with in the last few episodes. In the chat, I think you have a point. I think you are wise. Because you think that I am saying things that have point. Because if we never slow down and reflect, we can earnestly go in certain trajectories and fully be present in them. Or does it open many lapses of either judgment or feeling content based on circumstances but not authentically happy? Yep, you got it. Yeah, half the time we got to be doing the activities that are most significant, and half the time we got to be reflecting. It's not the experiences that affect us, it's the understanding that we derive from them. That's what makes lasting change. Understanding the logos. That we can then, the next experience, the next time we go out and do something, we can apply what we discovered in our reflection. In other words, we might come to a dialectic reflection on our experience, come up with a new insight. That's our definition of a new insight. We have to demonstrate it. In other words, we are a dialectic too. Go out and put it into action. See if it works. Right, and without doing that, you might become content without reaching your highest goals, settling for mundane goals or physical goals, or goals but not maintaining your goals, or having your goal but not in your own state of excellence. There are lots of ways of falling short, but you have to be constantly reflecting and wondering and asking what's beyond it all, or what is having these experiences, or what caused it, what's the principle behind it, or what is the self? These sorts of questions that we practice every day when we read. And if this self-reflection that we are learning with the art of the dialectic is necessary for change and necessary for learning, which is what we are discovering in the Meno, then you're right. If you're not doing that, you're going to be stuck on a trajectory. Now, that trajectory we recognize as our fate. The trajectory that our Pathologos puts us on, leading to an inevitable conclusion, an inevitable tragedy or failure, and you ending up in that state of mind that this has all been about. The state of mind that you falsely think is knowingness, is knowing the self. Because that was the cosplay, the charade, the act, the bullshit that our parents or parental surrogates played when we were young. And we believed them and took the blame ourselves. That's the origin of the Pathologos that we are looking for. The inner voice is the mirror of the Pathologos. Wow.
Wow. Wow. Wow. Wow. Wow. Wow. Wow.
The inner voice is the mirror of the Pathologos. It is a reminder. So next time you're out talking with a friend, hopefully you have friends who like to reflect on their own mind, and you are wondering about an inner dialogue or an inner critic, or every time I want to do that thing, there's a voice that says blah, 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 blah. I wonder what that voice is, and why does it always come up and get in the way? Why is it always negative? And if they ask you, you could say, well, actually, the inner voice is the mirror of the Pathologos. It's a reminder. And your friend will say,
Wow.
and then your friend will clap. And then your friend will say,
I don't want to eat a monkey.
I don't want to eat a monkey. I want to listen to you and your wisdom. That's exactly what will happen. Step 1, find friends. Yes. No, step 1, judge states of being and states of mind. Judge them based on your level of understanding and your dialectics and and your conclusions and your insights about the nature of the Logos and Pathologos. Remember, everyone's on. Where's our model? Is it up on the board? Surely. All right, let's draw it out again. Okay, let's draw this. This is a handy model. Okay, what are we seeing? We're seeing that everyone is some level of development up the ladder of the Logos. Now, on this rung, we have, let's say, dianoia or understanding. This is the rail of the ladder. The other rail, that's not how you spell understanding, by the way, is your state of mind. And ultimately, that understanding becomes mastery of the dialectic or the Logos, and is called dianoia in Greek. And your development of your state of mind can reach all the way to nous, sometimes called the enlightenment experience or the brilliant light of being. Mind knowing itself. Brilliant light of being. Now, we have stages of development along this that every human being is in. This is what we climb in philosophy, this ladder, leading us to our goal of knowing the self. But we have been talking about, hey, it's not just knowing the self, whatever kind of knowing that is, but also functioning. And functioning as self. Greatness, benefit, the art of midwifery. We want to be able to function as we are as well. But every human being also has the inverse, has its shadow. So this ladder casts a shadow on the ground, and because it's the shadow of a ladder, it looks like railway tracks. And the thing about railway tracks is you can't get off the railway tracks. Which means if we gain insight into the origin scene of a person here, we can accurately probably predict the course of his entire life. His problem will repeat until it ends in failure. We want to prevent that inevitable disaster, the playing out of this dialectic, the dialectic led by a parasite. Remember, we don't have it, it has us. This is the Pathologos that leads you to the false image of the self. As well as your negative states of mind. Negative states of mind. So, therefore, this gives us two key terms. Fate. Fate is the negative, inevitable conclusion of suffering, failure, and negative states of mind that can be understood and are actually messages to help you wake up from this and learn the art that you need to wake up from this, because it's all messages to help you. It's not real. Do not follow it. Do not believe it. But how do you know it's there? You don't, which is why you have to be pursuing your most meaningful goals at all times, which is simply climbing this ladder. Because if you're climbing this ladder to you, what's the most meaningful goal? Knowing and showing the self. And reaching it through dianoia and logos, the dialectic, and increasing states of consciousness from happiness to bliss to all-knowingness to freedom, to clarity, to purity, states of mind that we can map as well. That's the opposite of fate. That's our destiny. The destiny of man. All man. All living things who have reached this level of development have awakened the ability to share in the logos and share in states of mind, as well as engage in self-reflection. Eventually, they'll realize that behind it all is the highest idea of God, the self, which is also not only the highest and most profound idea of God and reality, it's also the most immediate. It is the most immediate thing you could ever have. It's you, it's the self. All of these levels of development of understanding, all of these states of mind is experienced by something. So what? Why are we talking about that now? Well, you said the first step is getting friends, but I'm suggesting that Socrates would say the first step is learning this model, so that so when you are looking at people, you can judge, just like someone with the art of medicine has to judge. Are you going to be friends with someone with leprosy? Or I don't know if leprosy is contagious. I don't know anything about leprosy. Are you going to not judge and make friends with people who have infectious diseases? Of course not. If you're a doctor, that's the first thing you would judge. And you are getting paid to make that judgment. People come in and say, judge me. How sick am I, and what level of health do I have? Only our art is higher than medicine because it's what a healthy body is used for. The soul. It's a healthy soul. We're doctors of the soul, you could say. Or learning the art of the soul. Or the art of the self. Or the soul on its journey to remember or reawaken the self. So, equally so, everyone is going to have some level of development of understanding. Are they someone who loves thinking, loves reflecting, loves reasoning, loves finding principles, loves finding causes? Or are they someone who loves gossip? And of course, a little bit of gossip is fun and okay and fine, especially if you are using it as an opportunity to reflect on the nature and cause of problems, as some great people do. But if it's just regular gossip, they are not very far up this side, this rail of the ladder. Do they like understanding, or they always talk about belief? They talk about their dumb religion. When I say dumb religion, I mean every other religion that's not yours, listener. Your one is tops. Of course, I'm joking. All religion means to be bound by belief, and belief is a lower cognitive function than understanding, because it's literally believing the opinions of someone else. Being a slave, baby brain. The only redeeming factor is I think I'm associating it with love because I got these false beliefs from my family. That's the Pathologos. That's the nature of all human problems. So are they someone interested in image thinking? Racists or sexist? Are they interested in beliefs and opinions? Or are they interested in understanding? And if they're interested in understanding, are they understanding the causes and principles of the physical world? Or are they actually reflecting on the nature of mind or self or reality itself? These are questions you can ask yourself as you judge how far up this ladder they are. And by the way, is this an understanding that they are actually living? If they talk about understanding principles, do they do that, or do they yell at people? Do they blame people? In other words, is their level of understanding reflected in their state of being or their state of mind? And how far have they reached? Have they had deeper visions? Have they had an experience of the soul separated from the body? Did that experience trigger something in them, a desire to understand further? So in other words, you are judging the person's level of development of the logos. So if this is the logos ladder, but you also judge because every human being is at some level of development up that ladder, but they're also some level of allegiance, Nazi-like loyalty, blind pathologos, loyalty to their pathologos, their pathologos problem. A pathologos, let's say pathologos train tracks. Logos ladder or pathologos train tracks. Hey, when this person does get triggered, how triggered do they get? Do they insist we should beat up the person with a different view than their family pathologos? Do they make fun of people with different ways of being other than their family pathologos? Do they want to genocide people with other ways of being other than their family pathologos? These are all questions to determine at what level of zombie virus infection has taken over their soul. So everyone's going to be some level up here, some level up here, along there, which means you can plot it on a graph as a visualization tool. Hey, maybe they're really, really smart, but they're using that intelligence to play out their problem. They're way over here, in which case you might not want to be friends with them. I would suggest that the people more likely to engage in the most meaningful, personally meaningful pursuits, or this ladder, which is the very thing we just read we should be doing at all times, not only because it will allow us to spend our time reaching our most important goal, but it will also give us what we need to surface the inner dialogues that we can reflect on, to do this, to free ourselves from this, to move this way from our problem, while also moving up. That's what we just read. If this is what you want to be doing at all times, then maybe pick someone up here. Interested in understanding, reflection, and interested in becoming better, becoming happier, embodying their learning, actually changing their state of mind, and maybe even changing the level of reality that they can consciously perceive due to their development of understanding. Are they interested in that kind of development, being happier and wiser? So step 1, learn this graph. Step 2, go out around human beings and do what you have to do, ask the questions you have to ask, play the songs you have to play, present the comic book art you want to present while asking questions, so that you can, step 3, judge them based on the level of their problem and their level of insight and understanding of self. It's like an alien man. Step 4 after making that judgment would be doing your best to share in the logos with them, share in the dialectic, share your puzzles and questions and insights. And step 5 would be returning back to the Discord and sharing your experiences as you do that reflection on how it went. Step 5 is returning to your friends and reflecting. Now, what we're reading in the text is there might be a step 6 where you learn to reflect in a certain kind of way on your inner dialogues that came up while you pursued that meaningful relationship. And that might even help you free yourself from your train tracks even quicker. That's what we're reading. So exciting. The potential to free yourself from your problem and work your way up this graph. My religion is being human and being raw, vulnerable. So the word religion means to be bound by a saving belief. Like, everyone has their own different opinions about religion, but it all comes down to this. If you don't believe in Jesus, are you allowed to attend the Christian picnic on Sunday? In other words, no one reads the book. Everyone's beliefs are based on their own images and pathologos, but you got to believe in Jesus. That's what makes it a group. So religion means to be bound by a saving belief. But what we are discovering is, hang on a second, belief has nothing to do with truth. In fact, beliefs are the cause of our problems. This is a false image of ourselves that we believe to be true. These are pathologos, means sick belief or sick reasoning. We are sacrificing belief, which is again slavery, believing someone else, to develop an understanding, seeing the parts for yourself, the terms, arranging those terms into the structure. That's what we've been talking about. The self-logos terms into the dialectic structure. So you see how it fits for yourself, and now you understand how to fix your car engine. Now you understand how to fix your toaster. Now you understand something more important than both, the nature of your mind and the nature of understanding. So we're not interested in belief or religion. We're interested in what it takes to free ourselves from beliefs, to become open to understanding, to have that understanding awaken higher states of mind, and ultimately use both to reach the self, but also take all three of those together to function with all of it as a whole in the most beneficial way as a midwife or dialectician. In other words, how do we do this? Yip, 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 yip. So we're no longer on that. And this. Yip, 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 yip. So we're just up here. And share it with our community and make art based on it. Which is all just fun. The fun play of self in self-destiny. Why look for something greater when we are already something great? Well, Socrates in the Meno we just read said, well, there's one thing I will always fight for in word and deed. Always look for that which you don't know. Be curious. Try and find things which you don't know. Don't ever think it's not knowable, well, until you understand what knowing is, and then you can make the decision whether or not this particular thing is a knowable object of experience. In the Meno, we're asking whether virtue is knowable, because it might be beyond knowing. But also, we better know what greatness is. What is self-greatness? And by the way, does it apply to the self? Or is self greater than greatness? These are the questions we all have. Well, these are the questions I have, and that come up, that follow this kind of pursuit. Eat their shoes so they can't leave? Oh, okay. Once you, number one, learn this graph. Number two, use it to judge people. Number three, pick out someone that you think might be more receptive to this kind of meaningful activity. 4, invite them for coffee and have a conversation. 5, eat their shoes so they can't leave. And then 6, report on your results with us to reflect on. All right, I accept that amendment to the procedure. Get friends, eat their shoes so they don't leave. Yes. Yes, and that's the whole point. And the chat says, not sure, good question. That's what we do. We collect questions. The better we get at it, the more we can notice kinds of questions. And we could even structure the questions that we use in a way to help us free ourselves from this, free ourselves from the negative side of things, and more productively and efficiently reach our happiness. Questions. The art of questions is one way of defining the art of the dialectic. By the way, if that's the dialectic, what's this inner voice that I have that normally gets in the way? Oh, it's a mirror. Your inner voice is a mirror. It's reflecting your Pathologos. It's a reminder. In chat, I don't know. I think humans are beautiful. I wish they knew they were beautiful without religion. Yeah, well, we're kind of leaving religion behind. We recognize that beliefs are just manipulation, pretty much. To believe someone else, you don't have to believe. Let me ask you this. If you understand something for yourself, do you need belief? Does it matter what the man in the funny hat says about how you are a naughty child and you're going to hell, and then give me money and then perform sexual favors? Because that's all they do. That's pretty much their business motto. That's their business plan. To get people attached to beliefs that prevent their development of consciousness, which is, remember, beliefs are low down this ladder. There's image thinking, there's beliefs, there's understanding, or there's right opinion, of course, like the opinions we get as we read, but that only becomes terms that we structure, so that becomes understanding. And even understanding has to be about the realm of being, so that's dianoia, but that leads into nous, and both of these together lead into higher states of wisdom. Belief is right down the bottom. It's baby brain stuff. I believe that I am this and reality is this because my daddy says so and my daddy is Superman. That's stupid. Especially considering what we've been reading is our parents specifically lied to us to indoctrinate, to get us to accept a negative, harmful view of ourselves that will cause all our suffering in our lives. They really fucked us. Why would you believe that? Now, it's not a blame game. I'm using harsh language because, genocides happen. What do you think is the cause behind that? The Pathologos. Hitler's parents, what were they doing? So it's significant. However, it's not a blame game. We understand that this is a human thing. We have to go beyond beliefs, free ourselves from beliefs, because beliefs are what cause us to act in negative ways. If you understand something is bad, you can't be tricked into doing that bad thing. But if you have a belief that the bad thing is good, because you don't see it, it's not your understanding or nous, it's a belief, then you can do that bad thing believing it's good. That's the nature of human problems. That's manipulation. That's brainwashing. And it's all tied to one word, belief. Which is what religion is. It's a way of being characterized by identity with a belief that causes a lot of conflict and problems and genocide and so on and so on. That we are specifically here to evolve past, out of believing Donald Trump or believing Elon Musk or whatever, to understanding for ourselves. Because what happens beyond this life? You're going to take Donald Trump with you to tell you what to think? You're going to take your local priest or imam or rabbi with you, tell you what to think beyond this life? Of course not. You're here to learn about yourself and learn how to share in the highest aspects of yourself, specifically the logos and nous, and of course, the state of self. And why not function with all of them together? With the art of the dialectician. Thanks per usual, I gotta go. I appreciate you as always dealing with my nonsensical, goofy ways. Oh no, they're very sensical. Very useful for highlighting all of these new ideas. Remember, everything that I'm sharing is new. There isn't another podcast that talks in this way. Because we are reawakening philosophy. We are rediscovering a way of being that is innate to ourselves, that is our birthright and our destiny, but has been removed from human culture and history. We went down the Roman lineage instead of the Greek lineage of how to think about reality. So we're rediscovering that which we need to rediscover to save ourselves from our suffering, reach our highest goals, and maybe even save our species from extinction if it can be shown that this Pathologos is also the cause of, well, our problems within society, if it's also a reflection of the Pathologos writ large. So, yeah. So hopefully you are okay with being mistaken or being wrong or not understanding any of this. If you're okay with being puzzled, if you're okay with being confused, because that's the game. We're introducing a new way of being. Or rather, talking about a new way of being in a way that might remind us of our natural way of being. So good questions. I'm glad that you're asking them, and I'm glad you're open to new ideas. The inner voice is the mirror of our Pathologos. It is its reminder. Its messages are always dramatic. Messages are dramatic. The inner voice is the mirror of the Pathologos. It is its reminder. Its messages are always dramatic and convincing and seemingly knowing. Okay, let's yellowfy these. So the messages from our inner dialogue is dramatic, it's convincing, it seems knowing. For its voice is the echo of past learning scenes. Interesting. There we go. Past learning scenes. Subjects in philosophical midwifery talks are urged to note the cycle of these negative and inappropriate thoughts. Okay. You are urged to note the cycle, these negative and inappropriate thoughts. Interesting. So the thoughts don't only have to be negative or destructive or diminishing of yourself, but just can be inappropriate. Tangents, distractions. So note the cycle of these negative and inappropriate thoughts when they occur, and also note their frequency. For it is by reflecting on them, that one reaches an understanding of how such cycles affect our everyday pursuits. In addition, it is often remembered that they also learn to answer each of these negative thoughts as if they were formal charges delivered against them. Okay? So note the thoughts. Note how they're dramatic, convincing, and knowing. Recognize that it's an echo of the past. That's why it seems convincing. Note the cycle of these negative and inappropriate thoughts and when they occur, and their frequency. For it is by reflecting on them that one reaches an understanding of how such cycles reflect our everyday pursuits. You'll see the stakes, you'll see the effect, you'll see the importance of the game we're in. But it's also recommended to learn to answer these negative thoughts as if they were formal charges delivered against them. If your friend said, hey, you should give up tap dancing because you stink, you wouldn't go, okay, I'm going to give it up and I'm going to feel bad about myself for being a stinky tap dancer. You would answer him and say, no, I don't stink. That's a formal charge you're making. On what basis are you saying this? Why are you saying this? And by the way, is it true? Address them. Address the thoughts when they come up to shoot you down. For in taking these charges seriously and in answering them fairly, we can say that we respect their source and treat them as Zen-like koans. So or in the way that Socrates examines and answers his accusers and charges in Plato's Apology. So whether it's Socrates answering the counterattacks, the Pathologos arguments against philosophy at his trial, or recognizing it's not just that, but it has a higher connotation, it's a Zen-like koan. Zen-like koan is a question, like what is the sound of one hand clapping, that isn't supposed to be taken literally, because you can't clap with one hand. Even if you do this, that's not clapping. But it's an answer that's supposed to become clear when you see it from a different perspective. The goal in a koan is to change your perspective or your state of mind. Similarly, if we realize that these negative thoughts against us, these negative or inappropriate thoughts, diminishing ourselves, telling us just lying and saying you are inadequate or not good enough, lying and saying that reality is anything other than good and caring and knowable, and lying and saying you need belief, or understanding isn't good enough, or you shouldn't ask questions, you shouldn't follow the logos. It's some insult against the logos reality or self. which is not true and is specifically the opposite to what we are pursuing with our most meaningful goals, philosophy. So what? Well, if it's the opposite, then it can't be taken as literally true, like a koan. What is the sound of one hand clapping isn't to be taken literally. You can't answer it there. It's not a brain teaser. Some sort of trick question to get you to think in a different way. I think it's a little hacky because we have these real questions that don't have to be given to us by someone else, by someone with a book of koans. Doesn't have formal answers really. It's going to be unique to you. It's your puzzle that you are already curious about. That is already a puzzle to awaken a deeper insight. You don't have to pretend with koans and stuff. But it is like it. So if we do not take the negative or inappropriate voices literally, because they're not literal, they are more like a metaphor, they are more like a koan, because they are actually a reflection of what's false that you believe. That's your problem. You believe something false, essentially, about yourself and the world, and the origin scene which caused you to come to that false conclusion. So it is a mirror reminding you of the inner voice is a mirror of the Pathologos. It's a reminder. Very dramatic, convincing and knowing reminder, but don't be convinced. It ain't literal. Recognizing that it's not literal but a reminder of the aspects of your problem to help you solve your problem means you're treating your inner voice with a greater level of respect than just being pissed that it always shoots you down. It does always shoot you down. That's not a problem of your mind, it's a problem of whether or not you are learning and applying the dialectic. Because this way of answering questions, answering them fairly, is the application of the dialectic. Recognizing that we are hunting a hidden definition that these thoughts are clues about is, again, not taking it literally, but recognizing that they are messages. The practice of, how far do we have? Okay, got another page in a bit. The practice of writing down these inner dialogues, and that includes our fantasies, become a way of seeing the Pathologos as the structure from which all these thought forms are generated. So there is an underlying, just as there is an underlying structure called the dialectic that we pull out the self-logos terms to put into, so too is there a underlying thought structure behind everything you do, even your inner dialogues, even your fantasies. There's an underlying cause or paradigm, and that's a new way of seeing that you'll only get if you write out your fantasies and your negative or inappropriate thoughts, inner dialogues that come up as you pursue your most meaningful goals. The pervasive impact of the Pathologos can be seen. There is a pervasive impact we need to see. For through this study, one can see how fantasies rehearse and support the Pathologos. Interesting. You enjoy the fantasies that you have, sexual or otherwise? Fantasize about walking into the office and telling off your boss. Fantasize about, I don't know, anything else. Can they be seen and understood as rehearsals to support the very problem that you are here to solve? In which case, what does that mean about our new relationship with our fantasies? Having read this, will your relationship with your inner dialogues and fantasies change? If so, I'd love to hear about how it goes. Please share your thoughts and insights and experiences in the chat. Join the Discord, there's a link below. Thank you so much for joining me. Tomorrow we're back in the Mino, and Yeah, I hope you've got some puzzles about your inner dialogues and your fantasies that you can become puzzled about and maybe will awaken some insight about. Maybe? Oh, and be sure to judge people. And the ones judged most favorably, be sure to invite them for coffee. To practice sharing the logos. Thanks once again, and I will see you all next time. Bye.